Hello everybody. We will start. All right, welcome to the fifth episode of ACK and Friends, where we bring to you the best of Indian kids literature. Amar Chitra Katha has been telling stories for 53 years now, and India has always had great literature to offer, and a big part of that are the stories that were written solely for children. Today, there are a lot of wonderful authors who are writing joyful and important stories. We hope to give you a sneak peek into this delightful world of Indian kids literature. Today, we have with us Bijal Vachharajani, and a journalist. Bijal has authored several children's books including So You Want to Know About the Environment, What's Nima Eating Today, and The Seed Savers. She has co-authored The Great Indian Nature Trail with Uncle Vicky and 10 Indian eco-stars who are fighting to save the planet. She has also edited a magazine, rescued animals, and written tons and tons of articles on nature, food, and books. She's also editor extraordinaire at Pratham Books. We are here today to talk about her book, A Cloud Called Bhura. So let's welcome her. Welcome, Bijal.
Thank you so much, Sanjana and ACK, for having me.
Hello. We are very, very excited to have you here and talk to you. We have many, many questions, and we'll keep taking. If you have at any point, people watching have any questions for Bijal, please write them in the comments and send it to us, and we'll ask it whenever we can. We'll slip it in. All right, you guys, let's start. So, everything you do has deep roots in children's literature. Not only do you edit picture books, you also write for children, and you're always championing books written by other authors. Like, thank you for doing so. What is it about the children's literature, the world of children's literature, that draws you in so much?
Um, oh wow, that's a great question, Sana. I think children's literature is meant for adults like you and me who've always have had that inner child in them stay very very strong, and we constantly return to that literature to keep us grounded. I'm sure it's the same for you. I go back to children's books when I'm feeling sad. I go back to them for comfort reading. I go back to them for joy, and it was pure coincidence that I got a job in it. And even now I can't believe sometimes that hey, someone pays me to read books and write them and edit them. Like, how? But I think children's books are special. They provide them, they're actually magic. They're like this portal that you open a book, whoosh, you're into another world, and another world that's thrilling, that can be safe at times, and
Yes.
always wondrous.
Yeah, that's true. That's so like that's such a good description of children's books. In fact, talking specifically about picture books because you're editing picture books and you're commissioning picture books. So, what do you feel are some of the most important things that you look at while you pick a story to tell or you decide on what you want to publish?
So first, let me start by saying that my interviewer Sanjana Kapur is a fantastic writer of picture books, and she's written one of my favorite books, Who Stole Bhaiya's Smile.
Thanks.
And So I think one of the things when I'm editing a picture book or we're commissioning one, firstly, I have a fantastic team I work with who are like, we're all like this sounding board for each other. So first, everyone has to love the manuscript. We're also always looking for who's writing the story, so who gets to tell the story, who gets to draw the story. Perhaps that's very important for us as well. Apart from that, I think at the end of the day, how readable is the story? Like, did we get lost in it? Did we enjoy it? If we are left cold with the story, it doesn't work. But with picture books, one of the things that I remember interviewing Oliver Jeffers once, and he told me something that has really stuck with me. I can see your eyes going wide.
Yes, I know. I'm talking to someone who's spoken to Oliver Jeffers. Yay! All right, tell us more.
So he had said this was for the release of Here We Are, and he had said that picture books take that emotion and then they keep distilling it and distilling it and distilling it right down to that very core. So I think when we're looking at picture book manuscripts, one of the things we try and see is that core there. Do when we see it, can we see that little seed of a story that's shining, and then we know that we can water it, we can add a manure, and it become this fantastic book.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So moving to one of your other great things, and what you write about a lot in your books, is the environment. So you studied environment, security, and peace, and your love for environment shows through everything that you write. And from Nima telling us that to eat according to the season, and Bhura warning us about climate change. So is there at some point, did you make a conscious decision to use what you're writing, use books to talk about the environment?
I think I've always, everything I've done, the environment and animals have been part of it. And I've actually never thought of doing anything else in my writing or in my career in that sense. Everything has had something rooted with the environment. And I remember while studying in Costa Rica, one of the subjects, this quote came up saying everything is environmental education. And I was blown by that. I was like, yes, everything is about the environment, because at the end of the day, we live in an environment, right?
Yeah.
So I strongly believe that environment is what roots all of us. And it's pretty much what I look for when I'm looking for stories, because uh, I I've written perhaps one book that doesn't have environment as a mainstay. It's about inclusivity and tolerance. But apart from that, but that also is about the environment of social justice.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
so I think that for me, sustainability, climate change, food, everything is just so integral to what we all are as people. And I think children, for instance, just get it like that, unlike adults,
yeah.
or as we say, grown ups. But they just, like, you talk to them about an earthworm, you talk to them about a butterfly, you talk to them about a nature defender, and they're all ears. So
Yeah.
I think it was just a natural progression of ending up writing about the environment for children.
Okay. All right. So, a follow-up question to that is, so what I realized, especially when I was reading A Cloud Called Bhura, is that even though everything around us is plunging very speedily into gloom and doom, and everybody is ignoring, not paying attention to the environment, so how do you manage to stay so hopeful in everything that you write?
I'm so glad you saw hope in it, because I'm not a very hopeful person. I'm quite
I
a
did.
so I'm quite a pessimist in many ways. I'm quite a cynic also. But Bhura talks about climate change in the form of a brown cloud that comes and hovers on top of Mumbai. We're seeing something very similar. We are seeing this virus that's keeping
Yeah.
us at home. And in that, all of us find little pockets of hope, little pockets of joy, even though we see so much that's wrong with the world. And I ultimately believe that when it comes to childhood, there's a lot of hope and optimism that children come with.
Hmm.
They're not like us in the sense they're not jaded. They're not like, oh, nothing's going to happen. This world's going to go to this. They're just like, but can we change things? And so, which is
Yeah.
why I wanted to get the children to be the ones who will be like, wait, science
Yeah.
and find curiosity, all of that. So I just think that hope is just so important, because that's what humanity floats on, no? Hope.
Correct. That's true. All right. At this point, let's see if we have some questions from before I focus a little more on Bhura. So somebody, Mian, says that can you give some tips on writing? What should people keep in mind when if they want to write?
Can you repeat that, Sanjana?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Can you give some tips on writing? If people want to write, what should they keep in mind?
If you want to write, there's one thing you have to do. Like, it's the number one rule, it's the number two rule, and it's the number three rule. You have to read. Only a good reader can be a good writer. So read as much as you can. Read good books, read bad books to know what not to do. Read okay books, read wildly popular books, read books that bore you, and slowly you will start understanding how writers weave their craft, and you'll be able to use it in yours as well.
All right. Okay, I hope that answers your question, Mian. We have one more question from uh, Sanjia. Um, so, how do you make sure that the writer and the artist are on the same page while making a picture book?
Wow, that's a great question, Sanjaya, because I think that's a question that our teams grapple with constantly. And I'm sure the teams at Amar Chitra Katha also constantly
Yeah,
look into that. And a picture book is essentially this mix of text and images, right? So, how much will the text be? How much will the images be? Usually, typically, the text comes first, and so the way we see, we try, then commission the images, but sometimes we also have illustrators who create the text and the image together many times. So it's a lot of juggling of layouts, it's a lot of discussion, it's there's a lot of decision of which when does a page turn so that you get that aha moment or ooh moment, so a lot of it comes down to I would say designing rules, just understanding the principles as to how much white space and things like that. Also, it depends on the age group that we are working with. If it's book for much younger children, then the ratio of text to images will be much more different. The image will be much larger. The text will be large but lesser on the page. So it's a juggling act. We are like circus people, circus folks.
balancing things. Eh, okay, so switching to Buddha and paying, like, I want to ask you a couple of things about Buddha. So, first of all, let me tell you how much I loved the book. I'm going to go on a Buddha recommending spree and give it to everybody to read because I've already told everybody, instructed everybody at home to read it. And so, yeah, Buddha has,
Thank you
and
so
Buddha
much.
as the Buddha the cloud has so much character and like he even talks to us. So, like, how did Buddha form in your head?
Oh, so first, let me show you a picture of Bhura, because though you can just go outside and you'll be able to see Bhura in most cities, but that's Bhura. He's a very angry cloud. He's brown in color actually, but we print in black and white. And he only talks in rhyme because that's how the cloud is. What do we do? Well, the idea of Bhura came to me while I was at university and studying climate change. Um, I studied about this brown cloud phenomena,
Okay.
and basically, satellite images were showing these formations of brown clouds on the southern parts of the world, which is South Asia, Latin America, Africa, and so on. And it was of course due to fossil fuel burning, pollution, and all of that. And the report basically said some really frightening things as to how this would impact our monsoon patterns. It would cause pollution to the extent that it would impact our health, our breathing capacity, our cardiovascular health. And what happened was that the politicians did not take it very seriously. And I was quite, I'm very fascinated by climate change in the sense that it's a very frightening phenomena that we are living in. But at the same time, it's the people who react to it and make it what it is, right?
Yeah.
We decide what climate change is. There are the climate deniers who say, oh, it's nothing. And then there are the activists who are like, we've got very little time. There are the scientists who are showing us the facts. So I wanted to state, my question became, what if this brown cloud was a tangential body on top of Mumbai? I'm from Mumbai, so everything first comes into Mumbai, and not New York, as the book as the book asks. So I wanted to know what happens, because what will the people say? How will the corporates react? How will the news people react? How will adults react and how will children react, and that's how Bhura actually formed in my head.
Okay. All right. Thank you for showing that page, because my next question is about how good the pages look. So the pages look so good, and from where Bhura is talking to us to the notes in between and the newspaper clippings, and so how and Oindri has done such a brilliant job with such a brilliant job with the book. So how much did you discuss with them before the pages took shape? Did you have a lot of discussions?
So I'm really fortunate that Talking Cub has two fantastic people. There's Sudeshna Shom Ghosh, who's the editor on the book, and there's Maithili Doshi, who's the art director on the book. And they really helped shape the book. Like Sudeshna understood when I said that I wanted the front pages to be like this notice board, almost, in Amni's head. And Maithili just looked on and she asked questions. She sent me lots of mails asking for reference points if I have any. And then we decided to go with Oindri, who I think is just fabulous. I've worked with her, with Oindri many times. And Oindri is firstly very passionate about climate, but they're also they're able to switch between picture book and young adult and middle grade very effortlessly. So Maithili did all the magic with Oindri. I just had to be like, this is so nice. This is so nice. That was pretty much my job.
All right, great. So now, if you could read things. So at some point, Buddha comes over Mumbai, and just to give everybody who's watching a little about what Bijal is going to read. So Buddha comes and he sits over Mumbai and this big brown cloud, and at some point it starts raining. And yes, please read.
Okay.
Please, yeah.
So, what's happened is that there are four characters in this book who you need to know about, apart from Bhura and the city of Mumbai. There is Amni, there is Mithil, and Amni and Mithil live in the same building. They have a third best friend who's Tammy, also known as Tamanna. And their fourth best friend is Andrew. Um, Mithil, Amni, and Tammy are from Mumbai. Andrew used to live in Tamil Nadu. His parents had to move because the groundwater in their village ran out. Then they come to Mumbai and then they get Bhura. Now, right before this scene that I'm going to read from, something happens that makes Bhura very angry, which is why Bhura decides to spout poetry and says, "Ha! Date! Rid of me! Pooh! Twiddle jump, twiddle dee dee! Now you wait and see what happens with a mighty me. I'm going to really soar. I'm going to let out a giant roar. When it rains, it pours. April 12th. Temperature 55 degrees Celsius. Smoke, haze. Air quality index 302. Started raining. Everyone cheered. At last. But they quickly changed their mind. From Bura's whirling depths, toxic rain swept the city. This rain wasn't a cooling shower. It was a scorching downpour that scalded everything it touched. It reeked of red, hot anger. The sea swelled and rolled and finally spilled onto the roads, the drainage systems crumbling in minutes, the water seeping into people's homes and lives. The rain didn't stop. Instead, trees fell, and suddenly the electricity also went. And now, when the lights went out, Ammi, Mithil, Tammy, and Andrew had been playing Uno at Mithil's house. And the thing about Mumbai rains is that they tend to creep on you. It'll be raining, and next thing you know, it's flooded. And that's pretty much what happens here, only it's really a red hot flood. So, what happens is Mithil tries to call someone, cannot get through, the network is down. So Tammy gets a little worried. She lives with her grandparents. Her parents are no longer alive, and her sister is in the US studying. So she quickly runs to the landline and says, I'm so sorry, I have to call you. But it was dead. And then they tried the phone number from Andrew's cell phone, and Tammy's blood ran cold with every automated message she heard, telling her that her grandparents were out of coverage area and could not be contacted. So immediately she puts on her shoes and says, "Guys, I need to go." And Amni says, "Of course you do, and we are coming with you because that's what friends do, right? You go, you're always together." So quickly they wear their raincoats and they step out of the gate, and the sight before them was really frightening. Bhura swirled about them and in front of them. The whole city transformed into a giant washing machine, engulfed by water from all sides. The ocean of Bhura. Amni's voice broke a little. "You don't have to come," Tammy repeated herself. "These are my grandparents, not yours." Nobody listens to her, thankfully, and they start walking. Now, by now, the water's already way steep, and it's mud. They can see trash like cockroaches. Andrew couldn't help but think he would surrender. The months of darkness and dust his spines. He despaired that four teenagers wouldn't stand a chance against a toxic deluge. But as he looked around, Andrew realized that Mumbai didn't give up so easily. Along with rats, rubber chappals, and everyday possessions, one more thing floated in Mumbai: hope. Residents stood at the windows and doors giving away cups of hot tea and biscuits to people on their way home. They opened their homes to strangers. Young men and women were standing around open manholes so that people could steer clear of them. So finally, they reach Tammy's house and Tammy's lane, and they realize over there the water's actually neck high. And Mithil can't swim, so he and Amni stay back, and Tammy dives in, and Andrew follows her. And as they reach their building, they see that a few young men and women are there swimming around, helping people. "Abod, Anmol," Tammy called out, "do you know where?" "They're inside, on the fifth floor," said Abod, "at Aris uncle's house. Your Nanu, he wasn't well enough for us to..." Seemingly out of nowhere, a bright blue boat appeared behind Abod. A Koli woman in a bright pink Nawari sari was in the boat, rowing smartly, cutting through the water. Tammy swam up to her and said, "Fifth floor, my Nanu is there." The woman, she pulls Tammy on board. Andrew, Abod, and Anmol also go, and then they basically they row up to her building, and they reach the second floor. Tammy wriggles in, and she races up the door. It pounds on Aris uncle's door. There was no response. Tammy banged on the door again. Still nothing. "Uncle, are you there?" she shouted. The door opened, and there was Aris uncle, his white hair disheveled and his eyes wild with fear. Tammy saw her grandparents behind Aris uncle. Nanu was lying on the couch and Bain sitting next to him, worry etched on her face. Tammy ran inside. "I couldn't reach you. It was. Bain couldn't finish her sentence. "I know," Tammy said quickly. Come on, we've got to get out of here." So basically, then they bubble wrap Nanu up, and Abod picks him up in a fireman's lift, and they'll start walking out. It was quite a bedraggled procession. Andrew leading the way, his phone is lighting up the dark corridor, followed by Abod with Nanu over his shoulder, and lastly Tammy with Aris uncle and Bain. So then Andrew and Abod, what they do is they swim out, they help Nanu into the boat where the auntie was sitting, and Aris uncle was like, no, I am not going in. And so Abod just picks him up and takes him out. And then while Tammy is waiting, she wraps her arms around Bain, who was shivering. "No," Bain shook her head rapidly. "I can't." Tammy shushed her and closed her eyes as Abod returned. He gently lifted Bain, who kept her eyes firmly shut until they reached the boat's relative safety. Finally, Tammy plunged in and swam back through the window and into the boat. Abod and Anmol pushed the boat away, and the woman whose name they didn't know picked up an oar and started rowing. Tammy held Bain's hand in both of hers. Andrew was sitting, holding Nanu in his arms. In the distance, she could see Mithil and Amni waving. Just then, surrounded by swirling water and disaster, Tammy knew the meaning of family. All right. So that was A Cloud
Thank
Called Bhura.
you. That was great. Thank you. Uh, all right, so we'll start taking some questions from the audience soon. But before we do that, I'm going to ask. So these are four questions that I ask everybody who comes. So you just have to
Oh
give
no.
me quick answers. Are you ready? Are you ready to give me your quick answers? Question one.
Yes.
All right. So question one. What was the last Indian children's book that you loved? That you absolutely loved?
Nimi's Bizupa birthday by Shabnam Minwala.
Yay! All right. Okay, so if you had to describe yourself as a genre of literature, which would you pick? If you had to
As a
describe yourself.
genre, if I was to
Yeah,
describe myself as a genre of
yeah,
literature,
literature. Yes.
um, oh, uh,
There's mystery, humor, crime, horror. What do you want to pick?
no, I know I was kidding about that. I would be. Oh no, why is this so hard? Um, I would be nature nonfiction.
All right. Thank you. All right. So the next is one fictional character you would like to befriend or have a nice long chat with.
One fictional character I would like to.
We lost
Sorry, or have a.
or have a nice long chat with, even if you don't want to befriend, but just have a chat with. That's fine.
You know, I really want to have a long chat with Saucepan Man because I have so many questions. So many.
All right. Last question before there are many questions coming in, by the way. So I'm going to quickly switch to that. Is so as a children's author, I know that the world doesn't look at the profession very seriously, and they're always getting the strangest things. So, what is some of the most common or the strangest reaction that you've got when you tell people that you deal in children's books?
You know, I am so upset about this fact that I actually wrote a whole article. It's called Shit People Tell Children's Book People, Sanjana.
All right.
And it's right out there on the internet. I think I was asked if I was asked, uh, yeah, I was asked, like, you write? And I said, yes. Like, right. And I was like, yeah. And you are paid for that. And I was like, not a lot, but yes. And then the person decided to move on.
All right.
It was at a party and they just said, let's find something more interesting.
If only they knew. All right. So let us quickly start taking some questions from everybody who's watching. So Asha Nirmaya asks, what are you currently working on? Yeah. So what are you currently working on, Bijal? And if you had to choose one, would you be editing or writing?
Firstly, hello Asha, thank you for being here. I'm working on two things. One is we're trying to close my picture book with which Archana Srinivasan is illustrating, and it's looking beautiful. It's called P.S. How's the Weather Today? And I'm also writing a middle grade fiction on climate change again, because apparently that's what I do now. And if I was to choose one, would it be? This is really not, this is like I'm going to quote the sorting hat and leave it at difficult. Difficult.
All right. Okay, next question. There is one kid who is watching before we. I'm going to mention him right after this. So Komal asks, how much of reality do you put in your book, especially since every other day we wake up to horrifying news of the earth being damaged irreversibly. So how much reality goes in?
You know, a lot, unfortunately, and that's mainly because I have been a journalist in my past life. And so I dealt with a lot of facts there. So when I'm writing, I always try and get a lot of my facts together, and then I start spinning them into stories. And sometimes I find it very hard to suspend reality because of that. And so Bhura for me actually was very challenging, because I was like, I have to write about a talking cloud, like I'm going to make a cloud talk in rhyme. So it was fairly hard. It's actually fairly hard for me to keep bringing fiction into my writing. Reality is always there.
Okay. I hope that answers your question, Komal. And so there's this little kid who's been saying he loved the reading. He's called Avigyan Chakravarti, and he says, "Ma'am, I loved your book, and I will buy your book." So, all
Oh,
right.
thank you so much, Avigyan.
Next question is Lalita Sohasni asks, "Will there be a sequel to Bhura?"
Hi, Lalita, and I want to know if Lavanya Karthik has asked you to ask me this question. But so far I don't know if I feel like Amni and Tammy are constantly sitting and tugging my sari's pallu at some level. I just I'm not sure if there'll be a sequel. So Deshna, if you're listening, do you want a sequel?
All right. Next question we have is Samyukta Sunil asks if, as a children's writer, how do you step back from your everyday reality to be able to think like a child and write stories that captivate them?
Hi, Samyukta. Well, I think, like I was saying at the beginning of this interview, I think all of us, it's very hard to imagine yourself to be an animal. It's very hard to imagine yourself to be an elf, a fairy. One of the facts is that all of us. Okay, am I back now?
Yeah.
So it's a matter of actually stepping back into the time, revisiting memories, remembering that feeling of what it was to be that 10-year-old, that 12-year-old. And often it's a very hard thing to do, because it also swirls up a lot of the insecurities that you had as a child. But um, I do a lot of that with just stepping back in time, remembering that feeling that I had. A lot of them I was a very introverted child, which is why you'll see a lot of my characters are like that. And so yeah, you do end up. In fact, it's a fact that when I step back into the childhood, I end up writing characters that were very similar to me.
All right. Thank you, Samyukta, for that question. We have a couple of more questions. So Lalita says that was not her Lavanya's question; it was her question. She wants to clarify.
I am. Thank you for the clarification, Lalita. But the thing is, um, if you keep bribing me with lemon rice, there might be a sequel. That's my answer to that.
All right. Kritika Nair asks, what resources would you recommend to educate children about climate change and environment conservation?
Um, there's a wealth of resources out there. There's some fantastic children's books on the subject. Read Ranjit Lal. He's somebody who writes really beautifully about animals and environment. Follow Greta Thunberg and other scientists on social media, because they have a lot of interesting things to say. NASA has a very interesting climate change website, also, in fact. So it's a matter of looking online to find the right resources. So I would definitely, to recap children's books, there's a range of it. There are picture books by Debbie Guillory, by Barrow. Um, uh, then there's a Magic School Bus series, in fact, on climate change. Book on climate change. Then there's middle grade fiction and young adult, including Ranjit Lal. There's my book. There's who else? I just made a list today. I should remember this. My memory is terrible. There's the Carbon Diaries by Saki Lloyd. There's Pierce Today's books. Then there are non-fiction books that you can read if you're looking for books for slightly older children. There is Douglas Adams' Last Chance to See. Apart from that, there are lots of films on climate change online. Um, Al Gore's film An Inconvenient Truth continues to be very relevant. And follow scientists on social media, follow activists like Greta Thunberg on social media. They have lots and lots of interesting stuff about climate change.
All right, Kritika, I hope you made a good list with all that. I hope you were furiously writing. All right, so Parinita Shetty asks, whose ideas have most influenced your ideas as both children's book write, writer and reader?
Hi, Pari. So good to see you here. I do think that Enid Blyton's magical nature world really influenced me. My mother's love for nature was something that influenced me at a very, very young age. Because she would keep bringing stray kittens home and saying, "Arey, we need to take care of it." So there was no choice. As I grew up, I read a lot more, and one of the people who really influenced how I thought was is Bitu Sehgal, who's the editor of Sanctuary Asia, and he was the first person to take me to a forest and show me what's at stake. So a lot of people and all of you writers out there, writers, editors who work, I think you are all definitely over here.
All right, we'll take one or more question. Aparna Kapoor asks, when you read Bhura aloud, which character's parts do you enjoy reading the most?
Hi, Aparna. Thank you for attending. When I read Pura aloud, I think I enjoy reading. It's a little predictable, but I really enjoy reading Vaturio Bauche. He's a news broadcaster in the book, and he only talks in exclamation marks. So, which is a lot of fun because I do not write in exclamation marks or edit in it. So, and there's also this politician, Mota Bhai, who talks like a politician. So it's always fun to read his parts.
All right, thank you so much. I think that brings us to the end of our questions. That's a great place to end at Mota Bhai. So, thank you so much, Bijal. This was great. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for reading from your book, and thank you for writing this, for writing Bura. Thank you so much, and yeah, thank you. And we shall see you next week again at the same time. Please join us with a brand new with someone new to talk to, so please join us at this time. And if you haven't read our latest book yet, it is up on the app. The first part, it's called Mahadev, from Stories from the Shiv Puran. So if you haven't read it yet, please do. All right, thank you so much and have a great weekend.